What's up guys, Michael McElroy here with Iron Sharp Coaching. Let's talk about fasted workouts, fasted training versus fueled training. Pros and cons to each. Let's kind of break those down a little bit. So first, if you're trying to use fasted training for body composition results or losing body fat, then you probably don't need to. There's tons of research that shows that there's no difference in decreasing body fat with fasted training. As long as calories are equated for the same throughout the day, there's no difference. So when it comes to body composition, if you're looking for body composition changes, the only thing that matters, or the main thing that matters, is if you're at a calorie deficit. It doesn't matter when you're at that calorie deficit. If you're looking at it to become a little bit more efficient when it comes to burning fat as fuel, then there could be some merit to that. Not always, because at the end of the day, the more aerobically fit you are, meaning the more volume you're doing, the more volume you can handle, then the better you're gonna be at using fat as your fuel. So should we do fasted training or should we do fuel training? It kind of depends on the year. So the time of the year, sorry. If you're far away from your race, then I would say you could do some training in a fasted state. And I say there is some benefit to that, as long as it's not to the detriment of your recovery. So if you're waking up on a Tuesday morning and you're going for a 45-minute easy run, and you do that fasted, I don't think that's big of a deal, because you should be able to do that, come home, not feel like you need a shake or post-workout recovery or anything like that. You should just be able to eat your normal breakfast and kind of go on with your day. If you're waking up and you're doing a hard threshold workout that lasts an hour and it's got a bunch of hard intervals in it, and you do that fasted, I don't think that's a good idea, because it's gonna be at the detriment to your performance, and you're not gonna, because you're fasted, you're not gonna be able to hit the intervals that you want to, or hit quite as high of an intensity, or sustain that as well as if you were fueled. So you're actually hurting your performance because you're trying to do this fasted state training, when you could just fuel a little bit, get better quality session in, and then regulate your eating throughout the rest of the day and have a better overall caloric balance, because you're fueling your actual training. Swimming is one that I a lot of times do fasted, because it's not as impactful, meaning it's not as taxing on the body. And it's oftentimes something I do first thing in the morning. So I wake up, roll out of bed, and go straight to the pool. I'm not gonna eat a bunch before that. I would say this is where the timing of the year plays a factor. As you get closer to the race, you want to practice eating a little bit before those AM swims, because you're going to be doing that in a race. You're going to have to eat before you swim on those times. So, and same thing that goes for all the disciplines. As you get closer to your race, performance and execution of the workouts matters more, or it should matter more, than trying to be in a fasted state so that you're either burning a little bit more fat, or that you're losing body composition. Because when you're peaking for a race, you should not be worried about decreasing body composition. That's the last thing you need to be thinking about, because what typically happens, what I've seen from clients, is that if you're trying to decrease calories and lose body composition or body fat as you get close to a race, it negatively affects your performance and doesn't really help your losing weight. So I think I made a separate video about this, talking about fueling, or it was in one of my principles, Iron Sharp Coaching principles, is fueling your body for performance is going to fuel your best body composition. So if you fuel appropriately, you train appropriately, and recover appropriately, that's going to lead to, over the long term, your ideal body composition. So that's what we want to focus on, as opposed to trying to ramp up training volume and performance and decrease calories at the same time. That's a recipe for disaster. It may feel good for a moment, you may see some quick results, but you're going to run into issues down the road, whether it's injuries, hormone problems, training stagnation, whatever the case may be, you're going to run into issues. So there's also been some studies that show when you do fasted training, you burn more fat during the session, but you become more carb dependent throughout the rest of the day, as opposed to if you fuel during the session, you burn more carbs during the session, but you use more fat throughout the rest of the day. So at the end of the day, I would look at fueling your performance first, and then worrying about maybe if you think you're super carb dependent. At the end of the day, the most fat adapted athletes I know and coach still on a race are taking in a lot of carbs. So it's not really changing much. like I said, the more aerobically fit you are, the more fat adapted you're gonna be just because of the nature of your training, but you're still gonna wanna get those calories up during your race. You just have that in reserve as far as being able to use fats as well. The other thing when it comes to carb intake and fat intake, which we'll do a whole separate episode on this, but you want to make sure you're getting enough. What I see again is if you're not getting enough calories, which is a lot of clients that I have coming in, a lot of athletes that I have come in over the years, they're not eating enough, and so they either, one, they can't lose any more weight, or if they don't need to lose weight, then their performances hit a wall and they're just not able to perform like they think they should or they think they could, and that's because they're not getting enough calories. If they still have body fat to lose, but they come to me and they're under eating, they may be at a point where they can't lose any more weight. And the problem with that is you get to a point where you have what's called your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, and that's the base level of calories that you need just to live for your day. It doesn't take into account like actually performing daily activities, especially doesn't take into account your training. And if you're getting close to that or down below that, then you literally can't take away any more calories because you're not getting enough to fuel your body. So you may get to a point where you still may have 30 pounds to lose, but you can't go any lower in calories because you're past that point. So at that point, what you need to do is increase your calories slowly and appropriately. Get somebody who knows what they're doing to titrate you up appropriately to get to a point where you're at maintenance or above. If you do that properly, you shouldn't gain weight when you're doing that. And then you get to a point where at that point, then you can start decreasing calories, which will then, because your metabolism is adjusted to that increase in calories, now you can drop calories and lose weight from there. That's kind of aside from the training, but at the end of the day, like I said, most people that I've experienced coaching, and myself included, over times if I'm not tracking things, are under eating. And so fasted training is just making that worse, and you're under fueling, which is running yourself into the ground. So you're going to limit your performance, you're going to increase risk of injury, and you're going to increase risk for having problems down the road from a hormonal standpoint and a performance standpoint. So that probably maybe brought up more questions than answered, but let me know your questions below and I'll be glad to address them in another video.